Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Welcome back, preschool peeps. We hope you enjoyed our 300th episode.
It was so good.
Sometimes it's nice to take a break from the heavy and serious and do that sort of episode, though there were heavy and serious things in it, I think.
So too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you weren't there, go back. 300th episode is a big deal.
Yeah.
We're here today to talk about something, though, that is a little different from the 300th episode. But
Correct.
Before we do, we want to fulfill a promise that we made during that episode, which was to start once again shouting out locations that are very high in our statistics. And if you've not listened to past episodes when we used to do this, we shout out a country other than the United States that's high in our ratings, because we are in the United States. So it stands to reason that the United States
is going
to be up there.
One. Yeah.
English speaking countries generally are pretty high. But United States is usually number one. Every so often someone else beats it.
And usually if somebody else beats it, we tell you.
Oh yeah. So we shout out countries other than the United States, but then also a location within the United States, a state that is high in the ratings.
Yeah.
So we're going to start doing that again, and we're going to fulfill that promise right in the beginning of the episode. Allison has those stats.
Yes.
Go ahead, Allison.
In the top countries this week, it's Canada, our friends to the north, in particular, British Columbia in Canada.
Which is our friends to the west.
Friends to the west. Yes, so who knew? But yeah. And in the United States, we are shouting out Virginia. In particular, really, really high in Virginia is this town called Earlysville, which had a high percentage of people listening to us from there.
So hi, Earlysville. Thank you. And British Columbia.
British Columbia.
Yeah. A place I would like to really go. I've been to Canada, but more on the east coast.
Side. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely more on the East Coast. Because that's where we are. We're on the East Coast of the United States. Yeah, we can, it's long, but we can drive it.
We can do it.
Yeah. So at any rate,
here we go.
Here we are.
Okay.
And we're going to start with the episode topic, which you saw in the title of this episode. We decided to title it "Separate Training is Not Always Equal," which debunks an idea that those of us in the United States anyway were raised with, which is that separate can be equal, separate but equal, separate but equal.
Yeah.
I don't think separate can always be equal. And I think that that's particularly true if we're going to talk about the early childhood field. What is separate but not equal? We know that that's true for educational settings as a whole, but I'm going to propose that it's also very true for when we are providing professional development and training staff members who work in early childhood programs. And you notice I didn't just say teachers, I said all the staff members.
Yes, because I think that's a big part of it in this episode.
That's a big part of the problem.
Yeah,
in this
problem.
Right.
Yeah.
There are times when training may be facilitated that is tagged specifically for the person called teacher. And then the people called teacher assistant or paraprofessional go to a different training. And sometimes they're on the same topic, but that doesn't make them equal, folks. What are some of the things, Allison, that you were pointing out when we talked about making this a topic? You pointed out a lot of ways in which separate was not equal.
So I've worked in a couple different settings that this happens all the time. Sometimes it's a language thing, I think, where they're like, oh, we'll have all the one language here or the other language here, but the trainers are different. It's not even the language part of it. You have two different trainers, so you're not necessarily getting the same experience when you have two different trainers, right? Because
I think that's true in any language, even if they were both English trainings.
Correct, because that's what's also happened. But I also think,
or both Spanish trainings.
Correct.
If you have different trainers, it's not the same.
The translation, I think, something happens and gets lost sometimes. So I think
in either direction. If it was originally in another language and is translated to English, or it was originally in English and translated to another language, And I also know from colleagues of mine who are bilingual, who do both English
Yeah.
and Spanish trainings, that sometimes they are given materials that are not
Are
the same.
different.
Right. They're
Yes.
not the same.
Yeah,
So they
different
can't, even if
materials.
they wanted to, they can't teach it in the same way. They're not given
Right.
the same materials.
Right.
There are some organizations and associations and entities that do their very best to make them the same, the materials, which brings us back to, though, the trainers are different.
Yes. If you take a training with Cindy on the same topic and then take a training with me, it's going to be different.
Yes,
It's going to be different.
absolutely.
Because our personalities are a little different. My experience are different than hers. How I teach is different than the way she teaches. It's going to be different. It's the same topic. Both facilitators are correct and valid, giving you good information,
Right.
but it's going to be different.
Well, I think that's why it's important to retrain.
Yeah.
Just because you have completed a training doesn't mean that a year or two later you shouldn't do the same one again.
Yeah.
With a different trainer.
Yeah.
Because you just never know what someone's going to say that the other person didn't say, especially for trainings that are not, stick to the script, which is how they should not be.
Right.
Stick to the script.
Yeah.
You should have people who can speak to these topics.
Yeah.
And not be just reading a PowerPoint to you.
Correct.
You're welcome for that.
Because that's another issue, I think, with separate is not always equal, is if you go to a PD that is a facilitator who's just reading off of a screen, and it's the same topic as somebody who's very engaged in the topic, who has a lot of experience, you are going to get very different things out of that.
So with that in mind, imagine the teacher participates in a PD session one day. The teacher assistant or paraprofessional participates in the same topic, same language on a different day with a different trainer.
Yes.
They come back together and now they've learned two different things. There has to be time when the adults can sit together and compare their trainings. I'm not saying, I know people are out there thinking maybe like we don't have coverage. I can't let both people in one classroom go and participate in professional development. I'll have nobody to work with those children. Totally get that.
Yeah.
So if you have to have people participate in learning with two different people, or even on two different days, listen, I'll admit there are some days where I'll tell one story and some days I'll tell another story.
I was gonna say, even if you go with the same person, it's going to be different because you're going to tell a different story that day. People in the audience, but people in the audience might ask different questions on one day versus the other day, which might steer the conversation in a different way. Or that question is very valid for everybody, but you're not going to get it in the first one because it wasn't asked until the second one.
So here's what I'm saying.
Different.
I think we need to really think about, can we then take these people who attended separate trainings or professional development sessions or meetings or whatever it is, and then give them time to sit and debrief together, talk about what people said, what they learned, how they thought they heard things. People hear things differently, how they thought they heard things, what they thought the trainers were saying, what they thought was a good idea, what they would like to try and why, and let them sit together and kind of do this and not put them in a situation where they've heard different things, which is perfectly natural in separate trainings. And then they come together and now there's disagreement because they heard different things.
Right.
So I think that professional development, any kind of training, can't just end with the training. It has to be, we're going to do a training and then there's going to be a debrief.
Yes.
Right.
I think that's valid, because I've done that where because even in my current school, my aide will go to sometimes a totally different location, even though the topic is the same. I'm not even understanding at that point why they are splitting us, but they're splitting us because this happened on a day where it was like Columbus Day and we both had off. So why not just put us in the same room? But they didn't. They split us. She went to a different location. I went to one. It was the same topic. We came back, did have 15 minutes after because the kids weren't here yet. And she was like, what'd you think about this? I'm like, they didn't talk about that in ours, and it was like, so then we compared notes and we were able to kind of put it all together and pick what we needed to do and what we wanted to do. But I don't know why in that particular instance, why we were even split to begin with, but it was important for us to come together in the end. That's what made it be like, oh, okay, now this is what I got. This is what she got. This is what I understood. This is what she understood. And we were able to be like, this is how we're going to use it.
In a lot of ways, it's the debrief that's key. And
Yes.
it's the debrief that doesn't always get done.
Well, the debrief is where I was able to sit there and be like, how can we implement this together in our classroom?
Right.
If you don't have that afterwards, you can't even collaborate with the person on how you're going to implement it.
Yeah, it's important also when you do a debrief to do it as quickly as possible
Yeah.
after the session, because otherwise people forget the details.
Yes.
If they can sit together in some way talking about the details, that would be great.
Yeah.
And you know, I understand they can't always do it together. And especially like you had mentioned before, when there are language differences, that it's wonderful that trainings can be offered in different languages. And I really wish there were just better ways to do that. This is what I wish. I wish that, I don't know, like when I'm doing things online, I wish there were better translation services for people who are online. When I'm doing things in person, even before the pandemic, people had started to take out things like Google Translate when I was talking so that they could be reading what I was saying. It's not perfect. It's not right. It's not
perfect.
It's not, they'll tell me it's not great. I wish there was just really great listening and translating software that translated into many, many languages, because it isn't just an English-Spanish situation. It's English in many different languages. If you're providing the training in English, it's English in many different, people with many different language backgrounds can be in there. And why are we not working harder technologically speaking to make people more comfortable in these learning sessions? I just, the separate, not always equal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I had an interesting experience recently. I was on Zoom doing professional development, and Zoom gives you a notification when someone starts to close caption in a different language. And it was very interesting to me because people were closed captioning in, like, one of them was, I think it said, I could be wrong here, folks, and you can correct me, but I think it said it was closed captioning in Estonian. Another one was professional development was closed captioning in French. You know, I think we need to think about the fact that English, Spanish is very important, but also it's not only Spanish.
Yeah.
And it's not only English all the time either.
It's correct.
Like it's, so I just want a campaign for better software for this, for people. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know none of you can make that happen, but I think it's really key to think about that.
Maybe there's somebody out there that is listening.
Maybe you know someone who does translation software. It needs to be improved because consistently people have shared with me that it's a problem. And you know, if you can have a translator in your session, that can work too. But again, it's not only one language that people need it in.
It's not one language.
No,
it's not.
It's not. So let's be a little more culturally sensitive software people and get the translation a little better. Yeah, seriously. And it would also be great if people were able to get, like, sometimes you have handouts and articles and things to share, and it's not always easy to get those translated either. But, you know, but going back to the whole training thing, I want to mention those of you who are not working in an early childhood professional environment, because I know we have people who are not, who listen to this podcast. You know, if you learn something about raising children, and then you say to the other person, another person raising the children with you, you should watch this, or you should see this, or you should go to this class. Separate is not always equal. Right. You also need to debrief, even if you're watching like the same documentary
thing.
Right?
Yes. The same thing.
You're all watching the same thing about raising children, but everyone filters information through their own mental lenses. And so you may take one thing from it, they may take another thing, and now you don't remember what that other thing was, and you're not doing.
Yeah, but that is true, because remember we're going way back. The week before the world shut down from the pandemic, Cindy and I went to professional development
I forgot all about this.
Do you remember that after that professional development, which we both sat in and got the same exact information, we got pizza afterwards, and we sat in the restaurant and we're like, did you hear when they said that? And one of us was like, no.
Yeah.
Or I interpreted things differently than she did. And it wasn't wrong, my interpretation, but she was like, I didn't think of it that way. because we couldn't talk in the professional development, which we could have because we talk a lot, but we were like, no, let's not do that.
But we
Do you
didn't.
remember that was like
Yeah.
years ago? And
Oh
so
my, I
both of
totally,
us,
totally forgot we did that. It was days before the shutdown. And
it was the Saturday
Wow.
before the world shut down.
And we were, why did we go get pizza? Because we didn't want to eat the bagels that everybody had breathed on. We knew,
It's 100%
oh
true.
my gosh, we
Because
knew there was a virus. We knew there was a virus and they had put out a buffet and we looked at each other and went, a buffet?
And-
That doesn't feel right.
And we were starving.
We were,
We did not.
we were so hungry. But then the really silly part of it was we took ourselves to a pizza place with a stranger breathing on our pizza.
It was cooked. I don't know.
I don't
We
know.
survived. We didn't get it.
That said, you are 100%. We didn't. We were okay. That said, you are 100% right that when we
Yeah.
sat together and had a meal and
Yeah.
debriefed it, we have
Yeah.
heard different things.
And not because we heard different things. I think we interpreted it different.
Yeah,
'Cause I saw it through my lens
Yeah.
and you saw it through yours.
that's very true.
Yeah. So
Wow, that was one.
Right?
That was all around quite an experience.
it really was. And that was really some of the best pizza, I think.
So
I want to find that restaurant again.
It was
Well, we should reenact that on that day.
I hope that they survived the pandemic. They were very good pizza.
I don't even know.
I don't know, but I can picture the
I
building.
could picture the building. I could picture everything. I remember
Yes.
everything about a lot about that day for some reason. Maybe because it was
Because it was the last thing we
time,
were together for a long
a
time.
long time, and then I only saw you on a screen for a couple years.
Yeah, there was that. There was that.
I think that's why it's so important that we do this together now too, is because we went through that.
You're right. And you know what?
I know.
Separate
It's
is not always equal. If you go back and you listen, you're going to find sometimes my sound was better. Sometimes Allison's sound was better. Sometimes my video is better. Sometimes her video is better because separate,
It's
not always equal.
equal.
So I really want you all to think about how can we debrief, because you are not going to hear the same things. You're just not, even if it's the same trainer, even if you're in it together,
Yeah.
you're not hearing the same things apparently, because that was our
That
experience.
was us. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to let you go ponder that.
Yeah.
And we will catch you next time on the podcast where we will shout out other locations. So come back, find out if it's
Maybe.
yours. Also know that you can learn more about us and other things and get resources and contact us through howpreschoolteachersdoit.com and on our Facebook page, How Preschool Teachers Do It. Bye, peeps.
Bye, peeps.